Michael and Rachel Green were the kind of couple everyone envied. Successful, attractive, and seemingly unbreakable. But behind closed doors, their picture-perfect marriage was rotting from the inside. What began as quiet suspicion turned into a shocking discovery of betrayal, theft, and a criminal conspiracy that would end with handcuffs and headlines. Michael thought he had married his soulmate. Instead, he was sleeping beside a liar and helping fund a scam that nearly destroyed him. From the outside, Michael and Rachel Green appeared to have a life most people could only dream of. They lived in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. Their two-story home was spotless and perfectly landscaped, their two golden retrievers always lounging on the porch like living decorations. Michael was an architect with a reputable firm downtown, and Rachel ran her own small interior design business from their home office. Friends admired their lifestyle, neighbors waved as they passed by, and everyone who knew them thought they were one of those rare couples who had truly found happiness. In many ways, that perception had once been true. When they first met, there had been real passion. Their early years of marriage were filled with laughter, shared goals, and late-night talks about the future. But slowly, without either of them realizing, the marriage had started to lose its spark. Michael was always busy with work, and Rachel had grown increasingly distant. She spent more time redecorating rooms that didn't need to be touched, taking solo weekend trips to look at properties for clients, and attending business seminars that never had photos or receipts. Michael chalked it up to stress. He didn't want to admit even to himself that something felt off. Then, strange little details started piling up. One evening, while cleaning out the back seat of Rachel's car, Michael found a hotel receipt dated from a Wednesday afternoon. She had said she was meeting a client for lunch. He didn't say anything at the time, telling himself it was probably for a client or a showroom tour, but that was just the beginning. Her phone was always face down. She started leaving the room to take calls or laughing quietly at texts she wouldn't explain. When Michael tried to ask questions, Rachel became defensive, accusing him of being paranoid. Still, he wanted to believe her. He convinced himself that he was overthinking things. But the unease didn't go away. It grew, becoming a quiet obsession. At night, lying beside her, Michael would stare at the ceiling, wondering what he was missing. They still had dinner together, still smiled for pictures at family events, still kissed each other goodnight. But it all started to feel hollow, rehearsed, like they were going through the motions of a marriage that no longer existed. One night, after Rachel had gone to sleep, Michael looked through her purse. He hadn't done something like that before. He hated how it made him feel, sneaking around, but a part of him needed answers. Inside, he found a second phone. It was basic, no fingerprint lock, no case, just tucked away in the zippered pocket like a forgotten accessory. He turned it on, and within seconds his heart sank. Dozens of text messages from someone named M, some of them recent, all of them deeply personal. That was the moment everything changed. The doubt became certainty. The woman he thought he knew was hiding something, and Michael knew, whatever the truth was, he had to uncover it, no matter what it cost him. Michael didn't confront Rachel right away. As much as his heart urged him to demand the truth, he knew that an emotional reaction could drive her further into secrecy or cause her to cover her tracks. Instead, he chose a quieter, more calculated path. If he wanted to truly understand what was going on, he needed evidence, clear, undeniable proof. So, in the silence of their shared home, Michael began to investigate the woman he once trusted with his life. He started small. First, he downloaded tracking software onto her second phone, which he carefully returned to her purse exactly as he'd found it. Then, he installed a discreet GPS tracker under her car's rear bumper. It would alert him to every stop, every detour, every suspicious pattern. He also purchased a small surveillance camera, and placed it behind a stack of books in the home office. It faced her desk where she often worked and took video calls. Michael set it to record whenever it detected motion. In the first week, the footage seemed ordinary. Rachel spent most of her time in the office talking to clients and sketching out designs. But something didn't sit right. Several of her calls ended the moment Michael's car pulled into the driveway. He noticed that she closed her laptop quickly, like she didn't want him to catch what she was doing. On 2 different days, she left the house around noon and didn't return until late afternoon, times when she had claimed she'd be home all day catching up on projects. That's when Michael took things further. Using a fake name, he hired a private investigator named James Rowe. The two met discreetly at a diner on the edge of town. Michael handed over Rachel's schedule, photos, and the locations her tracker had reported. He paid for 2 weeks of surveillance, hoping it would give him the clarity he couldn't find on his own. The first real break came just 4 days later. James sent him photos, clear, high-resolution shots of Rachel in the parking lot of a budget hotel. She wasn't alone. A man stood with her, tall with dark hair and a familiar face that made Michael's stomach twist. They weren't just talking. They were close, hands touching, Rachel laughing in a way she hadn't laughed around Michael in months. The man kissed her before she walked into the building with him. Michael couldn't believe it. The man was Mark Ellis, his former college roommate and once close friend. Years ago, they'd had a falling out over money Mark had borrowed and never paid back. After that, Mark disappeared from their lives. Michael never thought he'd see him again, and certainly not like this. Suddenly, it wasn't just betrayal. It was personal. The person Rachel was sneaking off to see wasn't a stranger. It was someone Michael had once trusted like a brother. As the evidence mounted, a darker picture began to form. This wasn't just an affair. Something deeper, more dangerous was unfolding beneath the surface of their picture-perfect life. Michael sat at his desk late one evening, surrounded by open folders, printed photos, and digital logs of Rachel's movements. The deeper he dug, the more uneasy he felt. The affair with Mark was bad enough, but certain pieces didn't quite add up. Mark wasn't just a forgotten figure from their past. He had a history. Years ago, he'd lost his job under mysterious circumstances and had been rumored to be involved in shady side businesses. Back then, Michael had brushed off the rumors, thinking it was all just gossip. But now, with Mark suddenly back in their lives and sneaking around with Rachel, the past seemed to be repeating itself, only this time, much closer to home. Michael continued to work with the private investigator, expanding the search into Mark's recent activity. It turned out Mark had no permanent address. He moved from place to place, often staying in short-term rentals paid for in cash. He had no visible employment but drove an expensive car and wore designer clothes. A background check revealed a string of fake identities, shell companies, and financial transactions that pointed toward fraud. And troublingly, there were signs that Rachel had become entangled in more than just a personal relationship with him. Michael started reviewing their finances more carefully. He combed through bank statements, business invoices, and credit card bills. That's when he noticed a pattern. Rachel's interior design business, which had once operated with a handful of reliable clients, had suddenly become suspiciously active. New invoices had been submitted for services that were never rendered. Payments had been sent to unfamiliar business accounts, entities that didn't show up in any legitimate registry. Many of the deposits were just below reporting thresholds, a tactic commonly used to avoid detection. What struck Michael most was that some of these funds were coming from their joint accounts. Rachel had slowly siphoned money, hiding her tracks under the guise of business expenses. He discovered nearly $60,000 missing over the past 8 months, money that had vanished without any real explanation, and when he checked the names associated with the payments, one stood out. a holding company tied to an email address used by Mark Ellis. It became horrifyingly clear. Rachel and Mark weren't just involved in an affair, they were running a scam, and Michael was their primary target. The woman he had built a life with was actively helping an ex-friend defraud him, piece by piece. They were stealing not only his trust, but also his future. Every discovery made the betrayal more personal. The manipulation wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. Rachel had used her business as a cover, weaponized their shared finances, and brought a known conman back into their lives. And Mark, the same man who had once slept on Michael's couch during hard times, was now plotting to destroy him from the inside. Michael knew that time was running out. If he didn't act soon, he could lose everything. His savings, his career, even his reputation. The question was no longer whether Rachel was cheating. It was how far she was willing to go. Michael spent the next week moving in silence. Every morning he acted as if life was normal, kissing Rachel on the cheek, sipping coffee, leaving for work with a smile. But the moment he stepped out the door, his expression changed. The deception had gone too far, and now he was focused on one thing: exposing the truth with consequences. He took all the evidence he'd gathered, photos, bank records, emails, surveillance footage, and brought it to a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and marital fraud. The attorney, after reviewing everything, confirmed Michael's fears. The financial transactions pointed to a deliberate scheme, and Rachel could face multiple felony charges. With the lawyer's guidance, Michael also contacted a detective in the financial crimes unit at the local police department. They agreed to quietly monitor the situation while helping him build a stronger case. Now that the authorities were involved, Michael needed to time his next move carefully. If Rachel or Mark suspected anything, they could vanish, taking the stolen money and any incriminating evidence with them. So Michael set a trap, one that would catch them both in the act. He told Rachel he had to attend an overnight business trip in another city. He packed a small suitcase, booked a hotel room he had no intention of sleeping in, and left before sunrise. Instead of heading to the airport, Michael parked his car 2 blocks away from the house and monitored the security feed on his phone. The camera in the office was still active, and the GPS tracker on Rachel's car was updating in real time. Just as he suspected, less than 2 hours after he left, Mark arrived. Rachel opened the front door for him casually, like it was just another Wednesday. They went into the home office, and for the first time, Michael saw them together clearly. They were laughing, touching, rifling through his belongings. Mark opened file drawers and began pulling out documents, while Rachel scanned the desktop computer. It was surreal, watching the woman he married help a known fraudster search for private information. Michael notified the police, who were already on standby. Within 30 minutes, 2 unmarked cars pulled up quietly to the curb. Officers approached the house while Michael remained down the street, heart pounding. He didn't want to witness what came next, but he couldn't look away. The front door burst open. Officers entered with a warrant in hand, and within minutes, both Rachel and Mark were in handcuffs. Police seized multiple devices, forged financial documents, and even a burner phone hidden in Rachel's desk drawer. The search revealed spreadsheets containing login credentials, withdrawal plans, and even drafted property transfer forms, with Michael's forged signature. Rachel didn't look scared as she was led to the patrol car. She looked calm, almost resigned. Mark, on the other hand, shouted about misunderstandings and legal rights. But it was over. The lies, the manipulation, the slow unraveling of Michael's life. It all came to a crashing halt that morning. The trap had worked. In the days following Rachel and Mark's arrest, the quiet suburban life Michael once knew was replaced by a whirlwind of legal meetings, media inquiries, and deep emotional exhaustion. What began as subtle suspicions had unraveled into a full-blown criminal investigation. Michael found himself giving statements to detectives, sitting through hours of interviews with attorneys, and sifting through more financial records than he ever thought possible. The scope of the scheme was far greater than he imagined. Investigators uncovered a web of fraudulent transactions, fake business accounts, and manipulated loan applications, all orchestrated by Rachel and Mark. They had set up multiple shell companies to funnel money from not just Michael, but also unsuspecting clients of Rachel's interior design firm. Several homeowners who had paid Rachel for work never received any services, and their payments were quietly rerouted to offshore accounts. This wasn't just personal betrayal, it was a carefully constructed criminal enterprise. The court case moved quickly once the evidence was submitted. Michael's cooperation, combined with the digital and physical trail they left behind, painted a clear picture of their guilt. Rachel was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. Mark faced even more serious charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and forgery. His criminal record, which included unresolved charges in other states, ensured he would not walk away lightly this time. In court, Rachel didn't deny her role in the crimes. She pled guilty as part of a plea deal, though the reasons behind her actions remained locked behind a cold, emotionless expression. Michael watched from the gallery as the woman he had once loved stood before a judge and accepted her sentence. 8 years in prison, with no chance of parole for the first 5. Mark received 15 years due to his role as the ringleader and his history of prior offenses. After the sentencing, Michael was left to pick up the pieces. The emotional toll was far heavier than the financial damage. Though some of the stolen money was recovered, what hurt most was knowing that the life he built was based on lies. The memories of shared holidays, whispered promises, and plans for the future were now tainted by deception. He found himself questioning everything: how much of their marriage had been real and how long Rachel had been lying. Michael sold their house and left Denver within 2 months. He needed distance not just from the scandal, but from the reminders of a life that no longer existed. He moved to a smaller city, changed his phone number, and started over. With time, he found comfort in solitude, reconnecting with old hobbies and focusing on his career. Trust, however, would take longer to rebuild. Despite the pain, Michael chose to share his story, hoping it would serve as a warning. Evil doesn't always wear a mask or break down your door. Sometimes, it smiles across the dinner table and tells you everything is fine, until it's not.